What's up, guys? This is a Rogan review of the Adam Curry episode. This episode is very interesting. I would highly recommend, if you haven't listened to it, go ahead and pause this and go listen to it. Starts out a little bit slow, but maybe, let's see, a little bit before half of the way through, he starts talking about maybe like 10 minutes in, maybe less than that, I don't know, 5 minutes into this podcast, my review, I think he starts talking about like cell phones and your data being tracked, and what it's used for and what that means for our freedom. They talk about mushrooms and this, the story of Christmas and how it relates to mushrooms. There's a lot of cool things. There's more that I'm forgetting right now, but I would highly recommend watching this Adam Curry episode on YouTube and then coming back to listen to this, because they get into some crazy interesting topics that affect us all. And Adam Curry is the inventor, essentially, of the podcast. So this is a legendary episode. Hope you guys enjoy. Peace. So he was talking about how your phone is always notifying you and fucking with you at the beginning, because Joe observes that Adam has a flip phone. I've been there before. Sometimes at the one point I had chosen to use it just because it kind of did keep you disconnected from all the bullshit that's out there. So Adam was talking about how his phone has some sort of like operating system named Kaios or something that's not trackable, which or isn't being tracked. I'm sure it can be tracked, but I guess he's referring to your data being sold essentially to companies and stuff. Oh god, the T9 texting. I remember that. Jeez, especially on a flip phone, having to like so you had like the two modes or whatever. It's like you could press 1 or something like 3 times to get the letter C, press it once for A, twice for B, so on through the alphabet. But there's, I think T9 was like this, like you just basically pressed the letter of the word that you're trying to say, and it would like spell it out for you. And if it was incorrect, you could like scroll real quick to another option. But it still was time consuming, especially on a flip phone, and not like one of those sidekicks or envies or whatever. So Adam was talking about the Alexa and how it's like recording. At first he liked it, and then once he understood what it actually was doing and everything, and recording and I guess selling your data to corporations that pay for it highly so that they can understand your psychology and market to you, exploit you, and sell you stuff, and so on. Shit, I lost my train of thought. Oh, so he was saying that Alexa was like selling, Alexa was, or one of these like sound devices, Amazon sound device, was communicating with your Roku TV remote, which is just creepy. And when you just think about how everything already is connected and will continue to be connected, kind of like a smart house. Isn't that a movie called Smart House? Like a Disney movie? Yeah, Smart House, 1999. Disney movie. Interesting. What were they? Wow, did they already know? Joe was talking about how our data is extremely valuable, and we didn't realize that. It's very interesting, the progression that technology and society are meshing together, and the progression it's taking. This is a very pivotal moment in time. Can either go one way or another. They start talking about apps like Venmo and something called Plaid, and having direct like access to your bank account and stuff. And they look at your like spending history and your purchases and your payments, what you pay first, what bills you pay first, and stuff like that. It's pretty Pretty weird. Ooh, so Credit Karma is also paying attention to your data and what you're doing. Wow. So Joe's saying that he has a fear that these companies are, they're not just monitoring your data or whatever, that he has a fear that they're going to be controlling us. And Adam says they're not only controlling us, or it's going to be not only controlling us, it's going to be enslaving us. And have y'all seen The Matrix? I know a lot of you have. Without going on the deep end, the reason I bring that up is just because I could totally see how technology, if it hasn't already, it's totally possible. And that's what I mean. It's a pivotal moment. It can go one way or another. But yeah, Adam starts talking about how it's going to be enslaving us in our behavior and stuff like that. And I get into like kind of, I think in this podcast, I'm not sure yet, but I think I get into like astroturfing and social engineering, 2 terms. Astroturfing is like, without me typing it in real quick, it's like you're basically someone's like manipulating something to create a false like grassroots movement, sort of. So it seems like it's a natural decision that is happening, but people are making the decision based off of like inception, maybe, I guess you could say, like or something. I don't know. Someone basically putting a thought, kind of like subliminal, like a subliminal thing. So and then social engineering is basically the same thing. It's like directing how society is and directing how people think. Kind of like a war on your mind type setup. So it's really cool to hear these guys talking about this. This is actually mind blowing. This podcast. I mean, this is only 5 minutes into the podcast. Like, it's a 3-hour one. This is a great, epic moment in history. Oh, somehow the Progressive app, they give you discounts if you're like not speeding or like not braking too hard. Wow, I didn't know that. That's crazy. You know, like you said, it's incentivizing certain behavior. And one thing I thought about when I was listening to this podcast is through watching documentaries on like China and seeing how they have the social credit system integrated with like these cameras, these facial recognition cameras. When you have like social credit programs set up with facial recognizing cameras throughout the city, a web of like those, like we talked about in the VA China episode, I was thinking about, after listening to this episode, it seems so foreign for Americans to think that there's any type of threat, really, I feel like. I mean, because speaking personally, relatively, living here, you know, in Virginia, felt pretty safe. You know, of course, there's been some crazy things. I mean, DC is not too far away. You know, the Pentagon, stuff like that. Like what happened in the past when I was in like first grade, you know, on 9/11, like, you know, or the DC sniper or whatever. I think he came down closer to, you know, here. But really, there's not many things, you know, and I'm sure some people can relate to that feeling. There's not a sense of threat now. However, I feel like this is kind of like the beast in the woods that's looking and watching and 100% is calculating your movements and going to strike, and you're not even going to see it, and it's going to be too late, and you're going to either be dead or maimed. And by maimed, I mean essentially what Adam's talking about, enslaved, severely crippled, and not free to just you know, do your thing. Now, this is not fear-mongering. This is just, in my opinion, I would almost be as brash to say as reality. It can go either way. Like I said, it's a pivotal moment. This technology, with the power of like quantum computing, which can think like quantum times more than a computer, a regular computer, you know, guys, I gotta stop talking because I gotta get through this. Joe was talking about with the whole Edward Snowden thing, people were like, certain people's reactions were like, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, what do you have to worry about? Now, that's a very foolish and ultimately selfish way to look at things. Because if you don't worry about it, then what's going to happen is what has happened up until this point exploitation of people, and we need to pay attention to this stuff, because if you say, oh, who cares, like with all these programs looking at your data and stuff like that, if you're not doing anything wrong. Well, Adam says around 7 minutes and 14 seconds, he says how the progressive, or allegedly, or this is what Adam says, that one of the apps, it can work when it's not even active, when it's not even being used. So that's not good, because if you've already signed the terms of agreement, and you sign up rights you don't even understand because you didn't read the whole terms of agreement, because who does, then that data could be sold for, just about anyone, and it could go in the wrong hands ultimately. They're talking about how it's like a zombie apocalypse, essentially, with people walking around their phones, in a daze, on their driving in their cars on the highways and stuff, on their phones, out to eat dinner. I think this one is the one that really bothers me the most, to see other people, and like if it happens to me, because usually I can put the phone away if I'm with a date, what I'm saying, if I'm with a girl, or even if it's a good friend, I can pay them that respect typically, unless I have something going on that I need to respond to. But I'm sure you've all been in situations or seen other people, other dates, where it's like the girl is just like on her phone, or the guy's just like on his phone and just ignoring the other they're both on their phones. Or they're taking Snapchats of the food and then going back to their phone and just laughing about things on their phone, showing pictures on the phone. It's like people don't know how to interact and socialize anymore, other than how they're being told to interact and socialize. And that is one of the dangers of basically blindly trusting the progression of this technology without at least concern or some sort of humanitarian intervention, essentially. Adam starts talking about, or Joe introduces him as the podfather, and it's pretty cool. He's the first person, I guess, to kind of co-create and introduce this technology. I'm not sure if it's RSS. They didn't say RSS specifically, but I'm assuming it's like an RSS feed that he created, the very first one. He talks about how they took like a media file or something, and they basically wanted to let the program notify someone when there was like a download, like a new podcast, or like a new episode, like a new video. He wanted a program to basically just notify you when there was something new, automatically download it, and you can like click on it and listen to it. So eventually Adam gets notified that Steve Jobs wants to have a meeting with him, and Steve Jobs wants to basically buy the podcasting technology that Adam Curry developed for I think he said the iPhone, the first iPhone. Pretty cool. They talk about how Steve Jobs played this video, or this podcast clip of Adam's podcast at the time, and at one point he's like, I had to restart my Mac like 3 times because it kept acting up, and like Steve Jobs like was acting, he's like, okay, like let's like move on to other things, and the whole crowd like gasped and went nuts. So it's pretty awesome. One good point that's brought up is that podcasting is media that you can hear that's not controlled by the media. It's free entertainment, free information. Starts talking about Christmas and the Amanita muscaria mushroom, and how it's red and white, and how Santa Claus is also red and white, and how these mushrooms grow underneath pine trees, which is the Christmas tree, and how they dried these mushrooms. They would use these mushrooms, they would eat them, I think in Siberia, as like a shamanic, kind of like a shamanic experience. They would eat these mushrooms and have some sort of spiritual experience. And I think the shamans would wear red and white or whatever. It's kind of crazy. This all got brought up, I think, by talking about deer, because Joe was talking about how reindeer eat the Amanita muscaria, and they like it so much that they will drink the pee of people if they've eaten the Amanita muscaria and are, if they pee. Joe was saying that that's where the whole idea of the flying reindeer comes from. And also that, like, while people were